So you recently wrote an article that I really enjoyed. It was called "Execution: The Master Keys to Getting Things Done," and I'm sure people can still find it on GTD Connect. One of the things that you said at the very beginning of the article, that being productive is all about getting control, and to that end, the first fundamental step is capture. Do you find that as people go on, that there's still that need to do those ongoing capturing sessions?
For sure.
And what should you be
I do.
looking for?
I
What should
do.
you be thinking about?
Anything that's got your attention that still you're not yet appropriately engaged with, and that's a pregnant statement, appropriately engaged with, meaning that's a cool idea. I might want to put in a book I'll write. Great. What do you do with those? Because the muse is fickle. She'll come in and out fast. So, oh, I guess I should capture that. Okay. And it could be all the way to anything that's got your attention. Called here's a problem, here's a situation, here's an opportunity, here's a challenge that's on my mind right now. And those are the things that people are trying to manage in their office, i.e. their head, which, as you know by now, is a crappy office, right? And so what happens is you lose control by putting stuff in there, because that place is out of control relative to remembering, reminding, and managing the relationships between the commitments you have.
Mm-hmm.
It did not evolve to do that. Your brain did not evolve to do that. So that's why people feel out of control, simply because they've got so much stuff that they have not externalized to take a look at more consciously and make good clarification and organization decisions about what those things mean for them, and then how to manage those commitments. And that, automatically creates a sense of lack of control. And by the way, I use control, as you know, and not in like control the weather, control your kids, control your boss, good luck. I'm talking about control like having your car under control, or your desk under control, or your kitchen under control, or your brain under control,
Mm-hmm.
which means I've got enough sense of stability that I can focus on what I want to focus on without feeling like I'm being pulled, 20 ways from Sunday.
So here's the situation that I mean, I remember when I did my first, initial GTD brain dump system, it was fast and furious. The ideas were coming at me and I kept writing them down, and I filled up a lot of little notepads and everything else. But now when I do that, maybe the ideas don't come quite as fast and furious because I do this on a semi-regular basis. But now I find that I can easily get distracted. In other words, I start, an idea comes to my head and I write it down, but all of a sudden I find myself like thinking a lot about that new project or that new idea. What do you advise?
Nothing wrong with that, as long as you got the time.
Okay.
You're at a time in your life, Dave, where you probably got the time to run down a lot of rabbit holes. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, you're pressured to produce X, Y, and Z, and you got 65 projects, and you got people, breathing down your neck, saying da 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 da. That's a different story in terms of how much luxury do you give yourself to hang out and gestate or, brainstorm about stuff. Back when I used to fly, pre-pandemic, I'd be especially on cross-Atlantic plane trips, 10 hours to LA. I gave myself all the time in the world to spend as much time as I wanted, grabbing ideas and running down those rabbit holes as much as I wanted to, whatever, because I had 10 hours till I got anywhere where I had to do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So why not? Nothing wrong with it.
I miss flying for that reason. I always found myself to be so much more productive when I had those, even 4 hours of the year, not to mention 10.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, me too.
This capture concept, do you view this as a solo activity, or I mean, like, should I be asking others for input? I mean, like, for example, when I had a 9 to 5, I had a lot of people around me, and a lot of their ideas impacted me. So to what extent is that a solo activity, or should I be seeking input?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you're married, right?
I am.
If you and your partner sat down together and said, what's got our attention as a couple, you're going to have stuff show up that wouldn't show up with you individually.
Mm-hmm.
So same thing with a team. Hey team, what's got our attention as a team? And if that matters to you, if your intersection with your life partner matters to you, if your intersection with the team matters to you, real good idea that you and your partner feel as much in control of the intersections between you. You could probably think of right now some things that might show up. I think I can see your brain probably went there already.
Right.
What's your wife's name? Sorry.
Lori.
Yeah, you and Lori sit down. Bring Lori in. Have her sit down right here and say, hey, by the way, Dave and Lori, what has your attention as a couple, or as grandparents, or as homeowners, or as renovators to your home, or as whatever that you have not captured yet? So yes, it's all an individual project, but what's got your attention individually is much more subtle than you realize. Her agendas are, you're sharing karma, so her agendas are actually as important to you. Not that you have to have her agendas, but what's on her mind and where she may be feeling less control is going to affect your intersections. Trust me.
She can give you a pretty long list of things for me to be thinking about too, by the way. Yeah.
Well, and that's fine. She said, oh, gee, dear, thanks. I'll then take this list and decide what I'm going to do about it and what they mean to me.
Right.
So you can have a group core dump or capture, but then all the individuals involved still have to decide what each one of those things mean to you.
So I kind of moved ahead of myself a little bit, but I wanted to talk more now about clarifying, because for me at least, it's very easy to come up with a list of ideas, but sometimes where I get stuck is clarifying them, because I'm not exactly sure where to start.
So what's your question?
My question,
how do you decide?
Help.
Is how do you decide where to start?
Yeah, I mean, because it's like, I get this brilliant idea and I want to, I kind of know what it is, but I'm not really sure what to do with that idea or frame it unless I want to like dig in and do the project right at that moment.
Sometimes you can back up into it from stage 3. Where would you organize that? How would you organize that thought? And
well, that would depend on whether or not it's just a project or whether or not it's just a random thought or idea.
That's clarifying.
I hit it. Are there any kind of questions I should be asking myself though to make that clarifying process simple?
What do I need to do to get this off my mind?
Okay. And
if it's material that you say, here's the local Amsterdam, here's the community newspaper. What do I need to do to get this off my mind? Right. Well, what I had to do is say, nothing I have to do about that, but it's going to go on my second tray, which is all of my Dutch I'm practicing. So then I can pull it up when I want to see what words in there I don't know, and so forth. So I had to decide when this came in the mail, which it did. I had to decide, is this junk mail, throw it away? Is something I need to do something about, because is this reference material I just need to store in case I want to pull it back? Well, it's kind of reference material. It's kind of decision support material or action support material, which I put, in my second tray. So so it's not on my mind. It's just there. It's where it needs to be. So when I'm decide that I want to practice Dutch and see what's happening in the community, if best I can understand it, then I have it there accessible to me.
Yeah, and so you don't really even have to put it on a list, because all you're doing is just putting it in that file.
Sure.
Yeah.
All you need to do to get in it. What do I need to do to get this out of my head? Look, when I had to go, what did I have to do? When I had to go, right now I've got, face mask hanging from my a little thing out on my closet. So when I walk out the door to go somewhere, hey David, do you need that? Right. It's not on a list. It's kind of like an in your face checklist. So nothing. That's perfectly fine. I write as few things down on any list that I can get by with, as long as where I've got it and how I've determined where it needs to be is a that I consider it's a sufficient reminder for my commitment about it.
See, and that's a little bit surprising for those of us who have followed you for over the years, because it always sounded to me like you were just this supreme list maker.
I am. Well, supreme list maker. I mean, I don't know. I got a bunch of lists. So what? People
Yeah.
have grocery lists. People have a calendar. Those are all lists.
Hmm.
And the fact that you think I'm a supreme list maker, just like, well, that's because you're still trying to keep a bunch of lists in your head.
Yeah. Sometimes, sometimes when I read articles, especially from practitioners who struggle with the system, it seems that the common stumbling block, though, is how do you track a large number of ideas? So like you could put something on a someday maybe list, but if it just sits there forever, it's really not someday maybe. It's just forget about it list. So how do you track things?
Well, I get that. I've gone through that over the years. I've had stuff on someday maybe I kind of ignored for a long time, and at some point I went, I should go through my someday maybe list again, and I curated that. Not too long ago, probably a year or two ago, I dumped almost everything off my someday maybe list. I said, "Crap, I'm 75." Why even bother looking at that? And I still added a few more things, like Iceland and New Zealand and the Faroe Islands and other places Catherine and I would like to go potentially still.
Hmm.
You so there's still some things on there, and there were some new things I put on it, but I just kind of curated all of that. So those things, I don't care if I ever do that again, and dump it. So there's always a kind of review, because time changes the nature. Time changes the meaning of things simply by that series of time. Everything in the center drawer of your desk belonged there when you put it there.
At one time.
That's right. But now time has changed, and those ballpoint pen refills that you put in there, because that's where I should put those, was perfect when you had that pen. You no longer have that pen. That's now trash. But see, the time changes the nature of what it was. So
Yeah.
time will change the nature. What you think your priorities are. Tomorrow, ideally, if unless you're Alzheimer's, tomorrow you're going to be more mature and probably be smarter than you are today. So that's why the weekly review, or any kind of review or reflection on whatever is potentially meaningful to you. You could have a project folder called "Here's just strange, weird, I don't know what to do with ideas," and you can label it "strange what to do with ideas." And then
Yeah.
you say, well, how often should I be reviewing my strange what to do ideas? I don't know. Probably every year. That's why it's always a good idea, maybe once a year, to curate everything you've collected in terms of even reference material and everything else,
Yeah.
because all that changes. I've got stuff in my files right now, and I've got stuff over 7 years old that I could just dump because I don't need it for the IRS anymore.
Hmm.
So organizing and staying in control and staying conscious about all of your stuff is a never-ending art. This is you don't get organized and then quit. You just
Well,
get this stuff externalized, and then you just create the appropriate engagement with all of your content and all of your systems. And I think that's the real maturity with the process is, I haven't changed much of my process in years.
hmm
Tweaked a little few things here or there, but if you looked around my life and looked at my list, whatever, that hasn't changed much at all.
hmm
Didn't need to.
Yeah.
When it does, and I start to notice I'm putting more attention on this than I should. How come? Oh, well, David, why don't you get rid of that list? When people, as the world became a lot more digital, the old idea of context called at home, at phone, errands, at computer, whatever, kind of dissolved because so many people started to run their life off of one digital tool wherever they were.
hmm
I don't, but kids do.
Yeah.
So they don't need but one list called at phone, or at digital, or something like that. Then they can review that list appropriately.
Well, for me, one of the last lists that I had to almost do away with was the, at internet. because sometimes you were in places where you didn't have access to the internet, but you still had your computer. But now the internet is, you can go anywhere and you can have access to the internet, a hotspot off your phone or whatever else. So to be
Sure,
honest with you, that list or that context now disappeared from me.
sure.
So the next point you wrote about was reflect, and that is really what you're talking about. It's wonderful to collect all these ideas and add structure to them, but unless you're really reflecting on an ongoing basis, much like you would a brain dump at the beginning, that reflection phase also seems very important as well, right?
Well, it's a holistic model. You can't drop any one of these 5 phases out and still feel in control,
Hmm.
right? So you can capture, clarify, and organize everything, but if you don't look at your stuff, it all crawls back in your head.
Yeah, and if you don't do anything about it, if you're not truly engaged, then actually it's frustrating because you're looking at all the lists and everything, all the information you've collected.
Sure. But usually the only reason you're not going to engage step 5 is because you've dropped out one of the first 4.
Hmm.
You haven't captured everything, so you're not sure that what you're doing is what you need to do. So you go play a computer game.
Yeah, and
You
it, and
know,
it's I think it's sometimes easy to want to skip a step. Like if you want to like move fast, you think, oh, I can do that later. I can clarify that later. I can just get started. And I think that's where sometimes the frustration builds.
if you don't come back around to it, I do. What you say, I do all the time. I say, well, let me just throw that in my inbox. I'll deal with that later because I'm involved in what I'm doing right now. I need to take the dogs out to pee. You know,
Hmm.
that's the top priority right now. So everything else, here's where it goes. Then when I come back, once they're cool and I'm fine and whatever, okay, now what?
Hmm.
So it's you don't have to be involved in everything at all, and so be so anal, if you don't mind the term, about all that stuff. As long as you know how to do it and know that you have a systematic behavior that will get back to run through it again. But if you don't think you're going to empty out your email to zero at least this week, you know, hiding something or just parking away into your email does not get it off your mind. It does not handle stuff.
Right.
But it's okay if you know you're going to empty out your stuff at the end of the week anyway. You clean up, then you can let yourself get crazy and spontaneous, follow all kinds of rabbit holes.
Hmm. Throughout all these conversations you and I have had, I think the thing what I've learned the most and really appreciate the most is the fact that, when I read a lot of the forums, I see people who are trying to follow GTD, very methodically and very rigidly. And what I've learned in talking to you is that, you as the creator of GTD are still willing to kind of like, well, I do it this way, or well, I do it this way. I mean, to kind of modify it, still keeping true to the steps, but also modifying your approach or saying, yeah, I'll do this now. I won't do this now. I think
Well,
that makes us feel good that you do that.
I didn't do it, but people create their own canonical view of GTD.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got my own, but it includes and has from the beginning all of this flexibility because it's not about how, where and how much you capture. It's about that the principle is if it's in your head, it's in the wrong place. So
Hmm.
that's canonical GTD, right?
Yeah.
But how you do it, where you do it, and how often you look at it, what you do with it, and how as long as you're comfortable and feeling confident about what you're doing, there's no then you're doing as much GTD as you need to do.
Yeah.
I'm
And,
not
and
a,
I,
I'm,
that's
I'm
what
not
I've learned
preaching that
over the
everybody.
years.
Yeah, go
No,
ahead.
that's what I've learned over the years, that I think initially I tried to be too rigid in my approach. And I think once I realized that, I could use it as an important framework for my productivity, but realized that there were a lot of things that I could add, detract, whatever else, because they work best for me. It worked great for me. And I sometimes explain this to people, when they ask me about my GTD process. And I said, well, it's GTD like. I mean, I have modified things. I mean, I don't do things exactly as it's in the original book, but it works for me and it gives me a framework.
Yay,
Yeah.
all
Okay.
you need.
Good. I'm not
Yay.
being kicked out of the club.
No, not at all.
I got a couple of other questions for you that relate to the same subject. Every time I do this, I call it a brain dump, and I tend to do it. Not every week as part of a weekly review, but sometimes when I just have some time, I just say, okay, let's sit down with that blank pad and try to clear our brain and write all it down. Sometimes I still feel overwhelmed. How do I? Can I prevent that?
I don't know.
I mean, I've just surfaced so many new ideas.
Well, I think why would you feel overwhelmed instead of excited?
Because I look at the long list and I go, I've only got, 7 days a week, and I want to play and I want to do all sorts of other things.
Oh, you're just spoiled. Oh, okay. Don't
Yeah,
worry, get older. You'll get it.
I'm doing that, David. I'm doing that.
Yeah, that's going to happen automatically. Me too. Yeah.
It gives a lot of us much more comfort to hear you say how you use it, because then it almost gives us permission to use it in a way that is most helpful to us. So thank you very much, David.
Yay. Hey, you're quite welcome. And thanks for the questions. Again, as you know, we're all working to create a world where people perceive problems as projects, and that you have a clear head to focus on the most meaningful stuff. So yay. Thank you. Thanks for the conversation. Yay.
Do you consider yourself productive, but would like to move your productivity system into a digital environment? Hi, I'm Dave Edwards. I can help. I've created a course called Getting Things Done in a Digital Environment. In the course, I take you through each step of GTD and show you how you can use the GTD system in the digital environment that you choose. I demonstrate, I show you my system. It's easy to do once you have someone to guide you through the setup. The course is on demand and online, and it's ready for you right now. Find out more at daveedwardsmedia.com. Click on courses.